Yes, friends. Right now, this we have talked in the last class about the various characterization tools, various levels of characterization, and today we'll start from the structure. We can call it as structural characterization, if you want to call it. I said in the last class, when I say structure, we talk about at least 3 different levels. One is atomic structure, second is crystal structure, then third is microstructure. We are going to deal with this aspect right now, and after we understand the crystal structure and various tools that are used to find out the crystal structure, then we will go to microstructure a little later. So when we talk about crystal structure is all about how atoms are arranged inside a material. In this connection, people usually classify materials as 2 types. One is crystalline, second is amorphous. For example, glasses are all amorphous. What is amorphous? Amorphous. Again, here if you carefully use, people use the word morphology. As I was mentioning, people believe that morphology is nothing but the structure. And actually nowadays we don't use it like that, because morphology is an external shape of a material, but many people saw that the internal structure is reflected from the external shape. When I say amorphous, it means something which does not have a structure. In fact, similarly, the word atom has come. When you say atom is something which is broken, okay, and atom something which cannot be broken. So people believed once upon a time that this is the smallest thing, though now we know things which are smaller than atom, and that we also know that you can make the atom break. For example, we talk about fission and things like that. So amorphous is something which does not have a structure. That means atoms are randomly oriented, randomly arranged. Again, when we talk about order arrangement of atoms, there are again 2 types of order. One, we call it as a short range order, another is called as a long range order. Every glass that we talk about, the glasses that we use as window glasses, for example, you can see in this window the glasses, and this glass comes usually from a liquid. Liquid gives you a glass. In fact, people define a glass as configurationally frozen supercooled liquid. This is the term people regularly use for glass. Configurationally frozen supercooled liquid. Many people simply say glass is supercooled liquid. Glass is not a supercooled liquid. For example, if I take a liquid, and if let's say I take any metal such as aluminum, which has a melting point of 660 degrees centigrade, if I bring a liquid of aluminum to a temperature 600 degrees centigrade, it is simply called a supercooled liquid. It is not a glass. Unless I bring this liquid below the glass transition temperature of that aluminum, if the temperature is below the glass transition temperature, then only that liquid becomes a glass. And this glass transition temperature is usually much below the 600, much below the melting point. Generally, depending on the type of materials, the glass transition temperature can be different, but generally the glass transition temperature is usually of the order of, for best glasses, it is of the order of around 0.6 of the melting point. If I take Tg by TL, which is called the liquidus temperature, for the best glasses, it is of the order of 0.6. For many glasses, materials which are not so good glasses, that means whose glass forming ability is poor, for them the glass transition temperature is very low. So as a result, even for a best glass, this is only 0.6 of the melting point. So as a result, it is much below the melting point, and hence we cannot simply call any supercooled liquid as a glass. But once I bring the liquid below the glass transition temperature, below the TG, then the atoms inside the liquid gets frozen. They get frozen in such a way that wherever the atoms are inside the liquid, they just stay where they are, and that is what we call it as configurationally frozen. Whatever is the configuration inside the liquid, and that gets frozen, and that's why we call a glass as a configurationally frozen liquid. Then if you now go and look into the liquid and find out how are the atoms arranged in the liquid, we say the atoms are randomly arranged. Are they completely random? If you carefully look at it, it is not so. You always find that there are small clusters. If you have a liquid like this, there are small clusters here and there, which are of the order of around 100 atoms or 10 atoms or even sometimes 1000 atom kind of clusters, and within the clusters there is a definite arrangement of atoms, and that is what is called a short range order. In fact, that is what differentiates between if I go from a solid to a liquid to a gas. And if I ask this question, what is the difference between all the three? It is this: we see that inside a gas, there is not even a short range order. Atoms are arranged in a completely random fashion. There is no order inside that. Whereas a liquid is that, which is the next level, where you will see that there is a short range order. That means if I look at small regions inside the liquid, you will be able to find some order. Certain atomic planes inside this you can find, but you will not see that extending it beyond that particular cluster, whatever is the cluster. And once you freeze this liquid, you will see that inside the glass also the same kind of short range clusters will be there. In fact, it is only through the glasses people have been able to find out that there are clusters inside liquid, because it is difficult to see the structure of a liquid. Very difficult to take a liquid and send an X-ray beam or something like that to find out the structure of a liquid. But I can take a glass which is a solid and I can do the structure of a solid. And when people found out the structure of the glass, they actually found out that there are certain atomic structures. For example, if I do what is called high resolution electron microscope and look at the atomic arrangements inside the material, and I look at a glass, I see that in small regions there is a small atomic arrangement inside a thing. You will definitely see atoms with a certain atomic planes inside that. But if you go beyond this cluster, if I enlarge this particular region, it looks something like this. And each of this cluster, in fact, that is how you will know. For example, if I take an aluminum liquid and ask this question, what structure it takes when an aluminum liquid becomes a solid? Take an aluminum liquid and it becomes an aluminum solid. What structure it takes? Everybody knows that it takes a FCC structure, face-centered cubic. If I ask this question, why should aluminum take only FCC structure? How does this liquid aluminum know that it has to become FCC, not BCC or not anything else? The reason comes from here. It is because the liquid has FCC clusters in it, and when you solidify, it is those clusters which will become nuclei and start growing. And as a result, the structure becomes FCC. The next question comes is, why only there are FCC clusters? Why not BCC clusters inside this? That is where people have done calculations, thermodynamic calculations, to find out what is the free energy of an FCC cluster or a BCC cluster or a HCP cluster and so on and so forth. You can find out the free energy of variety of clusters inside a material, and people have found that this particular cluster has the lowest free energy for aluminium, and hence you see these clusters. So it is known now that there are short range clusters inside the liquid, and that is the characteristic of a liquid. But there is no long range periodicity. Whereas if I come to a solid is crystalline. But careful, this definition, because the glass is also a solid, but it is amorphous. So usually that's why we say most of the solids are crystalline. And what is crystalline? That is where the definition of a crystal comes. Crystal is usually defined as that which has a long range periodicity. For many, many years, people have defined as that with a long range order or long range periodicity. People thought that if I find an atom here, let us say, I go by a certain distance x in one particular direction. If I find the second atom, if I go by the same distance x once again, I should find a third atom. Then I say it is periodic. And that kind of a periodicity is found to be an inherent nature of all the crystalline solids until 1984. When somebody came up suddenly with a new type of material which did not have such a periodicity, such a crystalline periodicity, and those materials are now called quasi-crystals. We'll come to know about them a little later, but at the moment people let us accept that the solids, particularly crystalline solids, have long range order, something like this. But this long range order, later people have said that it is composed of two. One is called two types of symmetry. One is called a rotational symmetry, and second is called translational symmetry. We will come to know about these two a little more detail after a little while, but we should also see how did this whole concept of order came into picture. Long back, even the time of Plato. Just hold on for a while about the two types of order which we will discuss a little later. I just wanted to give you a brief historical account of how people felt about the order. Even a person by name Plato, all of you know Plato only as a philosopher, but Plato is the first fellow to talk about the order in the universe. He felt that there are 5 regular solids. These are called now as Platonic solids. You may ask me this question, what is a regular solid? A regular solid is a solid which is made up of regular polygons. You know that every solid, for example, if I draw a cube, all of us know that cube is composed of squares, right? This is a square. This is a square. And how many such squares are there? There are about 6 squares. That's why a cube is called hexahedron. Okay, because it has 6 faces. In crystallography, people call it as hexahedron. So there are 6 squares composed of, and if I look at each of this surface is a square. And a square is a regular polygon. Why do I call it regular? What is again a regular polygon? A regular polygon is that which has all sides equal. A equal to B is what a regular solid is. In a regular polygon is in 2D. So if there is a solid which is made of regular polygons where all sides are equal for that polygon, then we call such a solid as a regular solid. So regular solid is composed of regular polygons. Okay, and solids are in crystallography, we call them as polyhedra. And now if you look at it, what are these 5 regular solids? He gave the names as tetrahedron, octahedron, and then hexahedron. Actually, I should possibly put hexahedron even before octahedron, because tetra means 4. All of you know. Tetrahedron means 4-sided object. Okay. Then hexahedron is 6-sided. This is what is cube. Just now I told you. Okay, because it has 6 sides, we call it as hexahedron. Then octahedron. Octahedron means 8-sided. Then comes dodecahedron. Dodeca. Deca means 10, do is 2. So dodecahedron is 12-sided. Then comes what is called icosahedron. It is 20-sided. He believed that these are the only 5 solids, 5 regular solids. And he believed that the whole universe is made of these 5. And in fact, he called them as 5 elements. We say Panchabhuta in our even Hindu mythology, Indian mythology. And this Panchabhuta, which are supposed to be the earth, the water, the fire, and the air, and the ether, all this that we talk about, he believed that actually it is these 5 solids which are everything, the Panchabhuta. And then he talked about it in greater detail, but much later people found that if I use some of these regular solids, it is difficult to repeat. For example, if you take this particular wall, this wall has bricks in it. I have put one brick by the side of the another brick and made this whole wall. So the brick is the basic unit cell inside this wall, and the whole structure of the wall is made up of that brick. If I can find a shape which is a little complicated shape, I may not be able to put all those shapes one next to the other without leaving any gaps. And if I can find, if I have certain shapes which have such a characteristics that there will be some gaps left out when I put them together, then I cannot call it as a nice periodic structure. So as a result, certain shapes here, for example, people have found that if I take a tetrahedron, hexahedron, octahedron, these 3 can be easily stacked together to make a nice shape. And that's why these 3 you regularly find in most of the materials. If you take silicates, all the glasses that we talk about are silicate structures, they are all tetrahedra. And octahedra are also there in most of the materials. Similarly, the hexahedra, which are cubes, we know regularly FCC, BCC and things like that. But dodecahedra and icosahedra are not usually found. The reason is, if I take a dodecahedron and put next to the other so many dodecahedron in all the 3D, I see that some voids are left out. This is what in crystallography people call it as frustration. And because of this, people believed for many, many years that these kind of solids are not possible. Until 1984, somebody comes forward and says, yes, it is possible to see them. And it is very easy to even prove that these are the only 5 regular solids and there cannot be any more solids. For example, I can give you a simple geometric proof. Why only 5 solids? For example, to understand that, we need to know what is the definition of a solid geometrically. How do we define a solid? If I take a cube, for example, look at the internal angle at any one corner. The internal angle at any one corner is less than 360 degrees. The total internal angle. The moment the internal angle at any one point becomes 360 degrees, it becomes a plane. It is no more a solid. For example, if I take a square and put tiles like this, like you can see here, there are square tiles here. Okay. So if you can see square tiles, look at this angle. What is the angle? It is 360. Right? So once the angle becomes 360, it is a plane. It is no more a solid. Solid is that where the total angle is always less than 360 at any corner. If I define that, now you look at what are all the possible things. For example, now a solid can be made up of a three-sided object, or a 4-sided object, or a 5-sided object. What are the 3-sided objects that I know? I know triangle, for example. And because we are talking of a regular solid means made up of regular polygon, What is the regular polygon which is a three-sided polygon? It is an equilateral triangle. A triangle which is like this, where all sides are equal, or angles are equal. So if I take an equilateral triangle and try to put the triangles together at one corner and try to see what is the total side that I can get, you will see that I can put 3 triangles at one place, or 4 triangles at one place, or 5 triangles at one place, or 6 triangles at one corner. If I imagine a solid where 3 triangles are meeting at each of the corner, that is what is called tetrahedron. If I remember, tetrahedron is something like this with a dot here, and this is tetrahedron. That at any corner, if you carefully observe, it is 3 triangles. This is one triangle, this is another triangle, and the one behind. So 3 triangles are meeting at a point. Every tetrahedron is like that. So tetrahedron is that which has 4 sides. The 3 are on top, base is another, the 4 side, but you have 3 triangles meeting. And when 3 triangles are meeting, what is the total internal angle? It is 180 degrees. Because 60 into 3 equal to 180. Now if I imagine 4 triangles meeting at a point, what kind of a solid is this? The 4 triangles meeting at a point is, if I draw, it's an octahedron. If I do the same thing at the bottom, it's an octahedron. So at this corner, if you carefully observe, you can do that for all the corners. It is, you see, one side, another side, and one at the back. So each of the side of this particular base, when it is joined to this corner, you see that 4 triangles meeting. When 4 triangles are meeting, what is the total angle? 240 degrees. And that is what is called an octahedron. And because 240 is less than 360, it's a solid that is allowed. Now, if I go to 5 triangles meeting at a point, that is what is the dodecahedron. If you look at dodecahedron, it is a little difficult for me to draw a dodecahedron. Simply take a pentagon and put a point here and see that all the corners are meeting that. That's a dodecahedron if you carefully look at it. So the dodecahedron is a one where if all the triangles meet at a point, I'm sorry. It is not dodecahedron, it is an icosahedron. Icosahedron is where you have the triangles. Dodecahedron is another which will come in a minute, okay, which is called where the polygon which is being used is not a triangle but it is a pentagon. We'll come to it a little later. So if you take this, you see 60 into 5, that internal angle, total internal angle, 60 degrees for each of the triangle, and 5 triangles are meeting, so 60 into 5 is 360. Now what about 6? If 6 triangles, 6 equilateral triangles are meeting at a point, what is the total internal angle? It is 360. And if it is 360, it cannot be any more solid. And what is that? That is simple. If you look at that, it is like a hexagon. So if I join this, you can see here 6 triangles are meeting. All the 6 equilateral triangles. This is 60 degrees, 60 into 6, 360. And this is a plane now. It cannot be any more solid, because the total angle is 60 degrees. This is like a triangular tile. Sometimes you see the tiles which people use which have triangle tiles. So you can also have a triangular tile. You not only the square tiles, you can have triangle. So this is called a tile now. It is a 2D, it is no more a 3D. So that means 6 triangles cannot meet at a point, at a corner to form a solid. That is impossible. There cannot be a 6 equilateral triangle. Please remember, we are only talking about regular solids. So that means we are only talking about regular polygons. It is impossible to have that. Now, what is the next shape? Okay, if 6 are not possible, 7 are also not possible. So there is no point in thinking of it. Now, the next shape is square for us, which is a 4-sided. Now, if I think of it, 4 squares meeting at a corner. What is that? That is what is our cube. See this. If I take this particular corner, at this corner you have this square meeting, and this square meeting. You can see 3 squares are meeting at each other at that corner. So that is 3 squares meeting. So 3 of the 4-dimensional, 4-sided object polygon meeting at a point is what is a square. This is what we call it as hexahedron, or in simple terms people call it as a square. And there, what is the angle here? This angle is 90. So 90, 3 of those 90 are meeting. So that means it is 270 degrees. 270 degrees is less than 360. So it is possible. That is what is now a hexahedron. So far we have shown that we can get a tetrahedron, we can get an octahedron, we can get a icosahedron, and we can also get a hexahedron. Hexahedron is square. Now think of 4 of them meeting. If 4 of them are meeting, 4 into 90 is how much? 360. So 360 becomes like a tile like this. You imagine a 4 triangles meeting at a point. This is 90, 90, 90, 90 and 90. So it is 360. So it is no more a solid. It is only a plane. So that means it is impossible for 4 squares to meet. 4 squares means regular polygons to meet and form a solid. It cannot form a solid. So obviously 5 is also not possible, 6 is also not possible. Because it will go beyond 360 degrees. If 5 squares meet, 5 into 360, 90 is 450. 450 is not possible. 360 is the maximum that we can have. At any point, we cannot have angle more than 360. It is impossible. So there cannot be a solid where 4 or more than 4 can meet. Then the next solid for next polygon for us is pentagon. 3, 4, 5. And a regular pentagon. If a regular pentagon is meeting, if 3 of the pentagons meet at a corner, and that particular thing is what is called dodecahedron. And if 3 angles are meeting, what is the internal angle of a pentagon? It is 108 degrees. So 108 into 3 is 324. So 324 is less than 360. It is possible. So that is what is the dodecahedron. Now what about 4? If 4 of them are meeting, 4 into 108, it is more than 360. So it's not possible. You can see that we have been able to prove very easily using simple geometric rules that it is possible to have only 5 of them. And that he has proved in something like 400 BC or so. So he is the first father of crystallography, if you want to call it, a grandfather or whatever it is. And for the first time he showed that there are solids which can be a regular solid. But unfortunate thing is that he believed that that the whole universe is made of these 5 solids, which later people have proved that it is not so. So now the concept of symmetry, people do not use these regular solids anymore, but for the historical importance it is important to know that there are such 5 regular solids. And interestingly, 2 of those regular solids, which are called dodecahedron and icosahedron, are the ones which are the building blocks for the quasicrystals, which people now regularly talk about it. And in this context, we should talk about, when we talk about symmetry, I said there are 2 types of symmetries. one is rotational. The modern concept of symmetry is this, that there are basically two types. Of course, there are also other possibilities, some things like mirror. There is also something called inversion. But they are all related to some extent to the rotational symmetry. The basic thing is rotational and translational. What is a rotational symmetry? Rotational symmetry is related to a symmetry of an object when it is rotated around a particular axis. For example, if I take a square, rotate along an axis like this by a certain angle, you see that there are 4 corners here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I rotate by 90 degrees, you will see that 1 goes to 2, 2 goes to 3, 3 goes to 4, 4 goes to 1. And you will see when it is rotated by 90 degrees, the object will not look different. It exactly looks like an old object. So that means the shape merges into itself when it is rotated by 90 degrees. But if you rotate by, let's say, 45 degrees, the object becomes like this. It is creating new corners now. So any angle other than 90 degrees is not a characteristic symmetry of a square. And this 90 degrees, if I take and divide 360 by that particular angle, which is a characteristic angle, by which if I can rotate, the shape merges into itself, is what is called the fold of the particular, the symmetry, rotational symmetry of that particular shape. This, for example, for a cube, it is 360 by 90, which is 4. We say that a square has a 4-fold symmetry. That's why we say a square has a 4-fold symmetry. But at the same time, if I take some other solid, for example, I take a rectangle. Rectangle, if I rotate by 90 degrees, what happens? It goes like this, along this axis. If I do rotate by 90 degrees, it becomes like this. So it is forming new positions. So as a result, 90 degrees is not a characteristic symmetry of a rectangle. But if I take and again start putting numbers, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. If I rotate by 180 degrees, 1 goes to 3, 3 goes to 1, 2 goes to 4, 4 goes to 2. So the shape does not change. It does not create any new corners. So we say 180 degrees is the characteristic symmetry of this. And 360 by 180 is 2. We say that a square has a 2-fold symmetry. So that is how we talk about symmetry of a particular shape. So similarly, a triangle. A specific triangle, not all triangles, what is called an equilateral triangle has a 3-fold symmetry. But because if I rotate by 120 degrees, 1 goes to 2, 2 goes to 3, 3 goes to 1. So 360 divided by 120 is 3-fold. So you can see that, but if I take some other triangle, let's say I take an isosceles triangle, it will not have a 3-fold symmetry. If you want to have a 3-fold symmetry, you have to have equal sides. Okay, that means only regular polygons have certain symmetries. Irregular polygons cannot have symmetry. So we are only talking about regular polygons. Similarly, if I take a circle, circle will have an infinite symmetry, because but by any small angle I rotate, the things do not change. So like this, I can talk about, for example, if I take a regular pentagon, it will have a 5-fold symmetry. If regular hexagon will have a 6-fold symmetry. Like that we can talk about. So this is all called rotational symmetry. And rotational symmetry is related to a unit cell. Okay, we are going to come to what are these unit cells a little later. So and rotational symmetry is all related to at a particular point. If I rotate around a particular axis, what is the kind of symmetry? Similarly, people also talk about mirror symmetry. Okay, we talk about variety of mirror symmetries. That means if the symmetry around a particular plane is a mirror of the other, then we say it's a mirror symmetry. We can also talk about inversion symmetry. That means if an object which is here gets goes to another object on some other side, if this has x, y, z as the coordinates, if this is x bar, y bar, z bar as the coordinates, we say there is an inversion symmetry. So these are all variety of symmetries, but what is more important is all these symmetries, particularly rotational and inversion, they are all around a point. The rotation is around a point. Whereas translational symmetry is trying to translate it along a particular direction, and such that the distance between them is always equal. This is what is called periodicity. And people believed that a material to be called as crystalline should have both these until quite some time, until the quasi-crystals have been discovered. And that is when the whole foundation of crystallography got shaken. And people for the first time started believing, is it necessary that we should have both these? The reason why we should, people thought about it is this. For example, if I take the symmetries, people believe that a material, a crystalline material, can have only 2-fold, 3-fold, 4-fold, 6-fold symmetries, and nothing beyond this. The reason is simple, is because other symmetries, for example, a 5-fold symmetry or any other symmetry such as 7-fold or 8-fold, none of these are compatible with a translational symmetry. For example, if I give you a small explanation of how this can be easily seen, let us assume that there is a crystal with 2 atoms like this, separated by certain distance x. If I rotate this, I call this as A and B, let us say. I rotate B with respect to A by certain angle, and when I do that, this is a line joining these 2 points. If I rotate this by certain angle theta, this point comes here, let us say. So that this is equal to this. I am simply rotating like this. Similarly, I rotate A with respect to B and come to another position here. Now, if this is periodic crystal, okay, if it is a crystal with long range periodicity, then this line joining these 2 new positions is parallel to this particular line. And if there is periodicity in this particular line such that there is another atom here, another atom here, then there should be periodicity in this also. Because periodicity cannot be confined only to one particular direction. Periodicity has to be same in any direction which is parallel to one particular. If there is periodicity in this particular direction, another direction which is parallel to this particular direction, there has to be periodicity. That means if this is x, this has to be n into x, integral multiples of this x. Then only we can say it is periodic. And when do you get this n, this n as integer? Only when these angles are certain angles, you will only get. For example, if this is 2-fold symmetry, that means this is 180 degrees. If it is 180 degrees, what will be n? This, if I rotate by 180, this comes here. This goes here. Sorry. This goes somewhere here. So that means n is 3. N equal to 3 for 2-fold symmetry. That is 180 degrees. So by rotating B with respect to A by 180 degrees, I bring this to this point. This is B dash. and A goes there, this is A dash, and this total distance between B dash and A dash is 3 times that of AB. So n equal to 3. If I take threefold, if it's threefold is what? 120 degrees. If this is 120 degrees, if this is 120 degrees, then what is this? This will be, you will easily find that this is equal to, if I can write it like this, okay, you will see this is equal to this, and this is half of this. So this total n will become equivalent to 2. It's easy to show. If this is 190, this is 30 degrees, this is 90 degrees. And if it is 30, if you find out what is the sine 30, you will find that sine 30 plus this sine 30 will be equivalent to nothing but the sum half of this. Okay, because it is sine 30 is 1 by 2. So as a result, you can see this. So as a result, we can say if it is threefold, then n equal to 2. That means 120. If it is fourfold, what? This is being rotated by 90 degrees only. That means that new point comes here. B comes here. And A, when it is rotated, it comes here. Then n equal to what? N equal to 1 for a fold 4 symmetry. Now if I take a 5-fold symmetry, okay, or if I take a 6-fold symmetry, for example, if I take a 6-fold symmetry, that means I am rotating this B with respect to A by 60 degrees. That means it is 60 degrees. I am rotating B with respect to A by 60 degrees. They both meet here because this is equal to this, this is equal to this. All are equal. It is like an equilateral triangle now. And that means now n equal to what? N equal to 0. 0 is also an integer. So that means 6-fold symmetry is also allowed because all these symmetries are leading to the n being an integer. Now if I take a 5-fold symmetry, suddenly 5-fold symmetry means rotation by 108 degrees. So rotation by 108 degrees. And if now find out the distance between these two. This is not an integral multiples of x. You will get a fraction. And because you are getting a fraction, people said 5-fold symmetry is not possible. People call this as a forbidden symmetry. It's like in China we have a forbidden city. So we have, people called it as a forbidden symmetry. And they said no crystal can have a 5-fold symmetry. And so as a result, people said these are the only allowed symmetries, 2-fold, 3-fold, 4-fold and 6-fold. And only when a crystal consists of these symmetries, then only people called it as crystal. Until people came up with this, what is called a quasi-crystal. For the first time, a person by name Dan Shechtman in Ames Lab in USA has taken one aluminum manganese alloy. He was studying rapidly solidified aluminum manganese alloys to find out, to make high strength aluminum alloys, and he was looking at certain precipitates in a aluminum matrix, and those precipitates are Al6Mn precipitates. He was taking a diffraction pattern from such a precipitate in an electron microscope, and he suddenly looked at the diffraction pattern, and he saw the diffraction pattern has a very special feature, that it has 10 spots. Yeah, it's approximately that. So it's about 10 spots, 3, 2, 3. Okay, maybe I need to be a little careful. Okay, so it's about 10 spots equally spaced. And that's the first time anybody has seen a diffraction pattern like this, which has 10 spots around it. And when he looked at the diffraction pattern, it has certain pentagons inside the diffraction pattern. If you look at the second ring and third ring and things like that, he could see pentagons in it. So for the first time in a diffraction pattern, the pentagons are seen. And if there are the five-fold symmetry inside the diffraction pattern, there has to be a five-fold symmetry in the crystal, because diffraction pattern is coming from a crystal only. So from a material. So if there is a five-fold symmetry, and this basically means it has a ten-fold symmetry, if this ten-fold symmetry is there inside this, in principle, there has to be either a five-fold symmetry or a ten-fold symmetry inside the material. Then how is this possible? In fact, when he sent this to what is called, Journal of Applied Physics in 1982, August, if I remember right, August 8th is the day when he actually first time saw this. And nobody believed him. Nobody, including his own supervisor, believed him. He said, Dan, there are no such things. You must be seeing something funny. Repeat it. So he repeated so many times, and every time from that LI, he was always seeing that kind of a diffraction pattern. And when they sent this to Journal of Applied Physics, they simply rejected this. And they said, no, nothing like this can exist. And then he did contact some, and in fact, to the extent that he was doing a postdoc at that time, and his supervisor said, you are bringing shame to our group, so I request you to leave this place. So he had left that place and went back to his country, which is Israel, and then contacted some mathematicians and tried to look at, is it possible that a material can have such a diffraction pattern? Then people said that if a material has what is called quasi-periodicity rather than periodicity. What do I mean by quasi-periodicity? Think of this. Have you ever heard of what is called Fibonacci sequence? This is very famous now. Okay. Fibonacci sequence is such that if I take 0 and 1, add these two, I get 1. Add these two, I get 2. Add the previous 2, I get 3. Add the previous 2, I get 5. Add the previous 2, I get 8. And then 13 and 21 and so on. That means previous 2 items, if I keep on adding, I get the next item. This is also a sequence. Is it periodic? It is not periodic. The distances are not equal. But it has certain periodicity. So this is what people call it as quasi-periodicity. And people found now that if I take the ratio of these two, any two previous ones, the ratio finally keeps on fluctuating and finally becomes one number. And that number is called now tau, golden mean, which is equivalent to 1.667 or something like that. I have to just check up the exact number, but something around that. And so as you go to much larger sizes, the ratio always becomes equal. But the difference between the two may not be equal. Okay, you can see here this difference is 5, whereas this difference is 8. And the next difference will be, adding these two will be 13. Next difference will be. So the distance, whereas in a normal periodic, the distance between any two is always equal. This is what is periodic. This is what is called quasi-periodic. And they said that if a particular crystal has quasi-periodic, if a material, I do not call it any more crystal, if a material has quasi-periodic arrangement of atoms, and if you take a diffraction pattern from that, it will give you a five-fold symmetry. This was proved, and then in 1984, when he submitted this to Physical Review Letters, they accepted this. This was the first time anybody showed that, and now in last year 2011, Dan Shetman was given a Nobel Prize for this. Because he believed, this is what I always tell students, that you need to believe yourself. Unless you believe yourself, you will not be able to find new things. For example, to be again, because we are talking about it, I should also say that in 1978, a group from Banaras Hindu University exactly saw a similar diffraction pattern. Professor Surya Narayana is the first author of that, very famous metallurgist, and they saw it, but they could not pursue because their own head of the department, Professor Anantharaman, was completely against. He said no. To the extent that even Dan Shetman had to be ridiculed by a great Nobel laureate by name Paul Linus Pauling. Linus Pauling went to the extent to say that there are only quasi-scientists, there are no quasi-crystals. So, I mean, in science, there are things like this. You see something, and if you do not have complete confidence on you, complete faith in you, you just lose. We have lost a Nobel Prize. We would have possibly got it if Professor Suryananda and his co-workers pursued this. Though India has made a lot of discoveries in quasicrystals. For example, what are called the 2D quasicrystals and 1D quasicrystals are the discoveries from India. Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and Banaras Hindu University together made all these discoveries, but we lost a Nobel Prize because we didn't pursue. It's important that one has to pursue. So this is how a new paradigm shift has come, and now what the International Crystallographic Society, so far till 1991, they have been saying that a crystal is that which has a rotational symmetry and translation symmetry. Suddenly now in 1991 they changed the definition of a crystal. Now they say a crystal is that which gives a distinct diffraction pattern. So they do not assign any particular rotational symmetry, that it is possible that even a quasi-crystal also is a crystal, is a subset of a crystal, excepting that it is a particular type of crystal which does not have a translational symmetry. It does not have periodicity, but it's still a crystal. So this is how great breakthroughs can bring a change in the our foundations of our knowledge, and people's understanding of materials, understanding of various things can change when such great discoveries come. So this is how all the symmetry that we talk about. So symmetry, whenever I say whenever I say now crystalline material, I mean a material which has certain rotational symmetry. It can be anything. Starting from 2-fold. Of course, we do not talk. You may say, why are you starting at 2 folds, or why are you not starting with 1 fold? 1 fold symmetry means what? 1 fold symmetry means rotating by 360 degrees. It is like Atma Pradakshan, okay, that we talk in our Hindu mythology. So if you rotate yourself for 360 degrees, you always have a symmetry. Anything, if it is rotated by 360 degrees, it automatically. This is what we call it as trivial symmetry. We do not talk about it at all, because 360 degrees is a symmetry which every material, every object will have. So there is no point. However distorted object it is, if it is rotated by 360 degrees, it will come back to itself. So 360 degrees is not a symmetry at all. We don't talk about it. So we talk about 2, 3, 4, even 5 now 6 now, and whatever it is. And whereas normal crystals do not have this. Okay, quasicrystals do possess this. They also have 8-fold symmetry. They also have 10-fold symmetry and things like that. Now the other thing is the translational symmetry. Normal crystals, okay, many of them have a translation symmetry, whereas special crystals such as quasicrystals do have what is called quasi-periodicity. May not have a normal translation symmetry, but quasi-periodicity. With this, we'll stop now and we'll continue in the next class.